Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to find out more about the first 7 UL@Work professional diplomas. We're so delighted to have people here from a broad range of diverse industries, from manufacturing and finance to pharma and waste management. Just a little bit of housekeeping to start off before we get started. This afternoon's session is going to be recorded. If you have any questions throughout the event, please pop them into the chat box and we will do our best to answer them during the Q&A session. This is a Microsoft Live event, so you won't be able to turn on your mics to ask questions, but the chat box is there, so feel free to use it. We are living through a fundamental transformation in the way we work, and change is already happening and it's accelerating. Recent reports from the likes of McKinsey, Deloitte, PwC, the OECD have all highlighted the need for people to continue their learning and training after school and university throughout their lives. Reports have continually highlighted the importance of skills like digital skills, statistics, data analytics, programming, algorithmic thinking, change, innovation, leadership, agile thinking, creativity, and these are all in high demand across the world. UL@Work programs are at the cutting edge to address these important skills gaps. Towards the end of 2020, the UL@Work application from UL, industry, and a team of international experts received funding from the Human Capital Initiative to develop an innovative training program that was focused on the needs of industry. This includes professional diplomas that can be built towards a master's, and we're going to hear, which we'll hear about today, and also challenge-based and top-up undergraduate degrees. UL@Work will equip graduates with the technical and transversal skills to achieve their potential and become future leaders within their organisation. The best outcomes come from collaboration, and as we're going to hear later today, all of the UL@Work programs have been devised to meet the needs of Midwest and Irish employers and are designed in close collaboration with relevant industry experts. The strategic direction of the programme is guided by industry thought leaders, and we're very lucky to hear from some of those people today. Our first speaker will be Richard McKeogh, Director of Plant Operations at Stryker, who will just give us a little brief overview of the UL@Work programme. Emma Kerins, Director of Policy and Communications at Chambers Ireland, will talk about the flexibility of being able to stack professional diplomas towards a master's. Shane Geary, the Vice President of Internal Manufacturing and General Manager at Analog Devices here in Limerick, will give us an overview of the importance of having a programme that is co-designed with industry and academia. Claire McGee, the Head of Education and Innovation Policy at IBEC, will go through the skills that are in demand for upskilling and reskilling. And our final speaker is Professor Martin Hayes, who is the academic lead of the programme, who will give us a little bit more detail of each of the 7 professional diplomas, 6 of which are accepting students from September. So, Richard, I'd be very interested to hear your perspective of what were the key aspects of the UL@Work programme that interested you most?
Thanks, Sinead. So as Sinead mentioned already, this is really a collaboration between industry and UL. So UL have reached out, the team have reached out to us, asked us our biggest gaps, our biggest opportunities that we see, and they are fulfilling them gaps with education, training, and a combination of both work and experience. So for everybody to understand first, I'll just go through the key pillars that are in the UL@Work program, so we can get a baseline, and then I'll just deep dive into the professional diplomas and where we see that they'll add value to us and in the future as well with the digital future of masters. So there's 5 key pillars currently at the UL@Work. One is the 7 online professional diplomas, which are being released in September 21 this year. So 6 are being released in September 21 and 1 more in May 22. All these diplomas are digitally led and are fully aligned with industry. So they're covering the gaps that we see now and that we're not covered in our areas, and that we see opportunity for growth and opportunity in the future. So the second area is the digital future masters, where essentially you can take these professional diplomas and upskill further by combining 3 of them to make a stackable masters. The third is the challenge-based engineering degrees, which we're quite passionate about here in Stryker. The biggest opportunity we see in this is an accelerated undergraduate degree with longer work-based placements. So what we found here is that the short work-based placements of 6 to 8 months prevent us from inputting a lot of time into students because there's such a short stint that they can't pay back or they won't gain that knowledge to benefit the business in the long term. However, with a longer period, what we see is that we will invest more time in them, they will invest more time in us. So it's a more rewarding experience for both. And as well, it gives us further opportunity for future, for graduate programs and a feeder for them. The fourth area is the top-up degrees, where we're catering for non-degree holders who are working in their potential field of study. And the fifth area then is really catering for professionals who wish to upskill in a specific area without the large time commitment. So this is short professional development modules. If we identify a gap in business, we can have some of our team go on these development modules to try to help us close that gap and develop solutions for the future in a quick manner without taking too much time out of the people's time. So that's that one. So the professional diplomas is the first outlay of this, which is 6 for September 22, 1 for May 20, or 6 for September 21, 1 for May 22. So the diplomas are 1, data analytics, 2, intelligent systems, industry 4.0, 3, agile software development, 4, computer vision systems, 5, cognitive robotics, 6, strategic leadership, and 7, the digital futures and innovations. So in our area, so specifically in our factory here in Limerick, we have massive opportunity that we haven't exploited for computer vision systems and cognitive robotics. So we're already looking at solutions of how we can integrate this into our business. But with this education, it will accelerate our programs and hopefully bring us benefit far quicker than we would have anticipated. The key inputs here were all taken from industries, so the courses have been tailored for our current opportunities and the opportunities that we see in the next 3 to 5 years. And we have steps forward in aligning needs of industries with goals of education. So this is a major step forward in us setting the agenda for what we think is best for our teams, our employees, and obviously to help upskill people for the future. So the big sell for us in Stryker of these programs are they are all digitally led, so they're all looking to the future. There's a massive combination of both educational and practical work where we can get benefits quickly. There's 100% online allowing for flexibility, and the benefits to the students and the employers are far greater than traditional methods, especially for some employees who wouldn't fall into that bracket or who wouldn't have the time commitment that they could give. These diplomas offer that opportunity for them to grow into that. So like for us in Limerick alone, so we've 2 already signed up to this. 2 of my team have signed up to these diplomas. We see the benefit in them and we expect further people to sign up in the future as well. One thing I will say is I think it's a very fresh approach to education, really looking at the opportunities that are there and that we see coming in the next 3 to 5 years. So we're in medical devices and all of these programs will benefit us in the future. So that's me. Thanks, Sinead.
Thanks, Richard. I think that's so interesting how you've pointed out that it's not just important for the companies that are involved, that it is sectoral and Irish industry that will benefit from it. Emma, something Richard alluded to there was people not having the bandwidth to commit to a large course of education. You know, everyone's really busy at the moment and there's a real work-life balance. These programs were built with learners in mind, and I'd be really interested to get your perspective. And you know, you were talking to large companies and small companies all the time about why that flexibility is important and the importance of being able to combine smaller pieces of education into something bigger like a master's.
Yeah, thanks, Sinead. And firstly, thanks for inviting me. I'm delighted to be back just virtually with UL. As a graduate, I've always been a big fan of the really progressive way UL has approached education, and particularly workplace education. So for us, flexibility, we think that's where the real game changer is in the approach ULWork is taking. The buildable diplomas, the approach with micro-credentials, that is what will be needed in the workplace if we're really going to be able to advance this goal of lifelong learning. And improve productivity and improve skills across industry. We were involved about a year ago, past couple of years really, with a steering committee on the expert group of future skills needs with the Department of Enterprise, and they published a really interesting report last year called Leading the Way, which was looking at like management skills and under engagement with that, and the two big barriers for employees to take up courses or to take up skills or training were time and money. The whole notion of flexibility and the fact that you can, do a diploma for a defined period of time and then step away from that and maybe build that into like a more cohesive, kind of broader qualification or a master's. I think that's exactly what industry wants. From industry's perspective, in that it's easier to manage people's times and workloads and commitments, but it's what people want as well. Like people want that flexible approach in their own lives. If anything we've learned in the past year is that how complex people's lives are, and what working at home has looked like during the pandemic, balancing like home life, educating your children, childcare, and dealing with work commitments as well. But one thing we did learn in Chambers Ireland as well about how people respond when they do have time and when they do have opportunities is they do really engage with training and development. So Sinead, you kind of mentioned we work with industries of all shapes and sizes, and we do. We've got 41 member chambers, and primarily there's an SME base there. It's a small and medium business because that's what the Irish economy broadly looks like. But we surveyed members and businesses right throughout the pandemic last year, and one of the surveys we published last September was looking at, during lockdowns, did people engage with training and courses? And about 70% of respondents came back to us and told us, yes, we did, because we had time and we were working at home and businesses were shut. So when people have that time and they're able to engage, so like very much I would see what ULWork is offering kind of the really useful qualifications that industry needs in terms of addressing skills deficits and skills needs and productivity gaps and digital transformation, but doing it in such a way that industry and employees can adapt that to what stage they are at their own lives and what their own job demands of them and what their home life demands of them. And without that flexibility, we're probably going to keep replicating problems we have at the moment, where we know we've skills deficits, we know we've got digital transformation happening, we're wondering why middle management and employees aren't taking on the kinds of really savvy, necessary training and development that they need so that their own career can advance and their industry can advance. This way, and I suppose the ULWork way, really kind of given the pitch, is probably the way a lot of other institutions will need to also adapt in the future, and it's brilliant to see you guys first out the gate on that. So we're very excited about it, and we'll be speaking to our members about it for sure, and we're really hoping that we'll see a lot more of this in terms of third level education and lifelong learning as time moves on. So I suppose on that note I might hand over to yourself, Sinead, if that's all right.
Thanks, Emma. That was great. And one of the things that we keep hearing from yourself and from Richard is, meeting the needs that industry have right now and meeting the needs of that industry are going to have tomorrow. And I keep banging this drum. I honestly believe the best outcomes of any project come from collaboration with diverse partners, so industry and academia. So Shane, on that, industry and analog devices particularly were involved at the application stage. They're involved in the panels advising this particular PDs. They're advising the strategic direction. Why of the entire ULWork program? Why is that close collaboration between industry and academia important to maintain throughout the lifetime of the professional diplomas and indeed the ULWork program?
Thanks, Sinead. Well, let me first speak in general terms about the benefits of close collaboration as analog devices use it. I'm actually speaking to you today from just outside Boston, where Analog Devices is headquartered. And just down the road is one of the premier technical third-level institutions in the world, MIT. Now, ADI was founded by 2 MIT graduates, and we've had a very close relationship between our main site here and MIT ever since. And so they've had a large impact on ADI over the years. But it's really no exaggeration to say that our history of collaboration with UL has had a similarly significant impact on ADI. What you can see on the screen here is our European headquarters for R&D and manufacturing in the outskirts of Limerick. And it probably wouldn't exist without the close collaboration between UL, or NIHE as it was back then, and Analog Devices. So it was UL's willingness to take on board our requirements and customize its electronic engineering degrees in particular to provide us with the graduates which were knowledgeable in areas such as circuit design. That's what gave ADI the confidence to bring the world's most advanced industry to Ireland some decades ago, knowing that we could hire the talent to grow the business here and that UL would evolve the courses as technology changed, which was very, very important. And in fact, several of ADI's senior leadership team over the years, including our current CEO, Vince Roach, are graduates from UL in those early years of this fruitful collaboration. So in broad terms, we really highly valued the ability to collaborate with top universities on course design, have inputs into key subject areas based on the needs of what we see in the world of R&D today. What you see on the right-hand side of the screen is what we design and make in Limerick. Integrated circuits. There's a silicon chip in the center of that component with wires coming out of it to the outside world, covered in a black plastic coating. And that silicon chip might be just a few square millimeters, but will contain maybe millions of individual transistors etched onto it. And for many years, we hired primarily electronic engineers to do circuit design and maybe physicists to develop and run the manufacturing process. And we left our customers to do the job of taking our individual components and making them into a system. But as we all know, the world is changing. It's changing rapidly, and that simple world is no longer the world we live in. And if we go on to the next slide, we see how the technology trends that are being enabled by the next generation of those semiconductors from companies like ADI and others will be changing the world we live in the near future. And I think these are the 6 mega trends that we see enabled by next generation semiconductors. I think you can begin to see the correlation between the various professional diplomas, for example, that we mentioned today, and the skills that our R&D teams and our customers' R&D teams will need to deliver what you see on the screen. We all know that the world is becoming more connected. Every device is getting smarter. Every device is full of sensors. Every device is cloud connected. And our customers, whether it be a car manufacturer or a telecommunications company, they're also changing. And they have fewer hardware engineers and they have a lot more software engineers. And now they want us to provide much more complex system level solutions with a software stack to go along with the hardware. They want us to supply algorithms or perform analytics and take decisions based on the data that our systems generate. So we build in machine learning at the chip level, or use machine learning routines on the data within the system or on the cloud. And obviously with so many interconnected devices with connections to critical systems, security is now paramount and foremost in our thinking. So all these escalating demands are changing our hiring profile and what we look for in talent. We probably have as many openings for software engineers as hardware engineers, for example. We're hiring chemists and material scientists, as well as computer scientists. We're hiring people with system architecture skills. But what's really noticeable as well is just dramatically expanding the range of disciplines we hire from. What's also noticeable is how the pace of change has increased. So how the speed of evolution of this technology has rapidly increased. And what that means is, apart from the effect on the talent we hire and what we look for in new talent, it's also meant that our existing employees need to upskill as well. So overall, we're very fortunate. There's an excellent match between the technology megatrends that we see on the screen here and the professional diplomas and other qualifications we're discussing today. So from the industry side, we're going to bring, and we have been bringing, a perspective of what industry needs today and what's going to need in the near future based on the technologies that we are seeing emerging and what new skills will be required to enable those technologies. So I'm delighted that industry has been able to collaborate deeply with UL on these diplomas, that we could give the inputs to the courses as they were designed originally, and more importantly, that we can stay engaged and continue to give input into the direction that they will go in the future and basically keep them relevant. So to finish up, I'd like to congratulate UL for showing that same willingness to experiment and engage with industry that it showed so many years ago when they played such a major part in convincing ADI to put down roots in Limerick. So congratulations, and delighted to be part of it. So back to you, Sinead.
Thanks, me and Shane. And ADI are always at the cutting edge of innovation, I think, at UL. Companies are changing. I think Shane has really alluded to there the need for what's called pie-shaped graduates. So even people who are very technical in their skills, they may need to pick up other technical skills to, let's say, become a leader of a team. And to top that off then with transversal skills or, business skills. Every student who comes into a ULWork diploma will do their technical modules, but they'll also do modules from the business school to bring those transversal skills. And I think we might skip Claire for a minute, and I think the time is right maybe to go to Martin, because there's loads of questions firing in on the chat box around some of the details of the programme, like assessments and how long modules are needed. So we might go to Martin first, and we'll come back to Claire then to kind of talk about the horizon scanning in terms of the future skills. So I'll pass over to our Professor of Digital Technology and Academic Lead of the ULWork programme.
Thanks very much, Sinead. Thank you. And thanks to everybody. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Emma, for giving some great insight into effectively why we're doing this. I transferred across from the Department of Electronic and Computer Engineering, where I was head for 4 years. And the reason for that is that we are seeing more and more the transversal skills that Shane was alluding to, effectively all being digital. I mean, there is data being collected, there are decisions being made on the basis of that data, there are actionable kind of loops being closed, and the actual business of making those decisions is becoming an interdisciplinary skill in itself. And to be honest, in terms of us keeping our undergraduate programs fresh, in terms of keeping them relevant, this Human Capital Initiative is hugely beneficial for us because it allows us to develop, in partnership with industry, new material that is right at the cutting edge of what's required by them right now. And then we can feed that back into our challenge-based engineering degree programs and our regular engineering degree programs and our regular science programs, so as that there's a virtuous circle there, that we're closing loops with industry all the time and making sure that the material that we are delivering to all our students, be they workplace-based learners, or be they undergraduate engineers, or be they postgraduate full-time engineers or distance learning students, or people who are just interested in micro-credential, or who are upskilling, or who just are interested in just that little 6 or 12 credits worth of information that they need in order to be able to kind of lead their teams effectively in this digital world. We believe that ULWork will give you that. So whatever you need in terms of your professional journey, in terms of making the new digital world of work for you, we believe we're going to have some type of qualification or program for you to take over the next couple of years. So specifically in terms of the part-time programs that we're speaking about, we're thinking about diplomas, which are, and this is the first 7 that we're going to talk about today. Remember that there are going to be more and different diplomas designed again with industry, launching in September of next year. And each of these diplomas are designed using the expertise that we've developed in terms of delivering part-time and workplace-based learning over the last 25, 30 years. Specifically, we're applying the kind of tools that we've used for the design of the National Master of Science in Artificial Intelligence, the so-called industry-led AI Masters, which was backed by SkillNet in the first instance. And so we found from that a method of delivery of material and education that works. Effectively, students can give us 10 to 15 hours per week. We design our modules so as that they are self-contained within a 6 to 8 week window across that time period. And it's very much loops are closed using kind of online communities of practice. So we have spent a lot of time and effort and invested a lot of resources in the e-moderators that are necessary in order to make you an expert more quickly. So none of your time is going to be wasted. When you're online, you will have activities to do. You will have groups of learners who are doing those activities at the same time. You will have people who you can ask questions of in terms of making the hello world thing work more quickly. And we are pretty confident, based upon the feedback that we've received in relation to the AI Masters program, that this method of education works for workplace-based learners. To talk a bit more specifically about each of the programs, we'll start with data analytics. This is led by Professor Norma Bargary, and particularly as built out of the MAXI, which is our Mathematics and Application Center. And effectively, it looks at how we present, visualize, analyze, label, interrogate the data that is collected by all those devices that Shane was talking about. I mean, however many devices you think is going to be connected to the internet, you're going to be wrong. People say 20 billion, 30 billion, 40 billion, whatever it is. The number is increasing all the time. So if you can think about it, I mean, the data that's coming from all those sensors, no human can actually analyze them. You need artificial intelligence, you need machine learning in order to make sense of that. And so this diploma allows you to take that large amount of data and make sense of it. And it provides you with the analytical skills, the presentation skills, the statistical learning techniques that are required in order to establish patterns within the data. And it also allows you to close loops. How do you make actionable decisions based upon the data that you are collecting and that you are presenting? Now, we've designed this in our enterprise panel for this has been led by Analog Devices and Fiserv, but we also kind of designed it with companies like Eli Lilly and Becton Dickinson and Edwards Life Sciences in mind. So anybody who's collecting an awful lot of data needs to make sense of it. And we think that this diploma will add value to you. So our next diploma is Agile software development. So as you can see, I mean, the software that people are building these days are just not one-person enterprises. Teams of people are required to build the complex software and processes that are a feature of today's goods, systems, and services. So how do the teams of people who are required in order to construct this software, how do they work together effectively? So a tagline by LERO, which is the Software Engineering Research Institute, which is based here at the university, is the Irish by design. So that Irish software is a hallmark for quality the world over, and that is their selling point, and we're tapping into that in relation to this Agile software development professional diploma. It's led by the Computer Science and Information Systems Department, CSAS as we call it, and it looks at how enterprise professional level software designed by a team is put together in a rapid, agile, reliable, trustworthy fashion. It considers how the teams are built, how tasks are assigned within those teams, how software is architected by that team, how do we evolve that software in a continuous fashion so as that it works first time, but then the next version and the version after that and the version after that will work as well and will be backwards compatible. And we also talk about software quality and how that software quality is verified and validated in each step of the design process. This will suit any member of a large scale or a team that's designing software, but we have designed it with the Dells, the Johnson & Johnsons, and the Intels and the GMs of this world in mind. I just also draw people's attention to the Future Focused Professional Portfolio module, which is a feature of all the diplomas, by the way. So every diploma, you will be involved in an interdisciplinary team. So it gets to the heart of what Shane was talking about in relation to, modern engineering design is a broad church of many talents. So we have to have people from different skills, different backgrounds, talking to each other in a sensible fashion so as that teams work in an agile fashion. And the future-focused professional portfolio is going to be our way of bringing all those interdisciplinary different engineers and team members and scientists and mathematicians together. And so every diploma, that will be a feature of. So you can expect to be working with students from other diplomas and other disciplines as we consider a top-down design process. The next diploma is in intelligent systems. So particularly we are looking, this is our Industry 4 diploma, and we're asking the question here in this diploma about how the language of artificial intelligence and machine learning is applied to complex system level problems within a large enterprise, and particularly how different enterprises, different businesses can interact together in order to solve design challenges. So specifically, when you're using machine learning to kind of solve these problems, you have to become familiar with the language of AI, the language of machine learning. What does training mean? What does backpropagation mean? What does data engineering mean? What does decision making mean in that context? And then once you've got that base language, we have used the qualifying modules from our qualifying certificate in artificial intelligence to give people the tools that they need in order to be able to express themselves fully in an AI, machine learning, digital world. So that also conveniently allows us to introduce people again to the maths of what's going on. So, a lot of people may not have done calculus for a while, or they may not have done linear algebra for a while or whatever, but we are allowing you the opportunity to get back up to speed with that, using these tools, specifically Python, in order to be able to refresh yourself with those tools. So for example, how can you express things like, rates of change and how things are, moving and gradients and things like that? How can you use Python in order to do that? How can you make those decisions and that type of thing? So it gives people the basic tools in the first instance. And then in the second semester, we go to particular case study type problems. So we're looking at, in the first instance, supply chains. So we've designed this diploma specifically with people from Dell, and we're particularly looking at, like the supply chain problems that have occurred specifically during the pandemic. The go, no-go decisions that need to be made based upon the data that is available to you, based upon the machine learning that you've done. How do you do that? We're also looking at basic automated system design. So we're looking at how you build and plug and play machines, so as that the idea is that a system can be the product of a series of machines. How do those machines work together? And so that's we look at that in terms of automated system design. So specifically, we've designed this with the likes of Dell and Johnson & Johnson in mind, but we also think that it will be kind of suitable for anybody who's involved in interdisciplinary projects which are using Industry 4 principles. Industry 4 principles, anything where machine learning might be needed in your place of work in order to kind of make sense of all the data you're collecting. Our next diploma is in computer vision systems. So this is focusing on doing a deep dive on all the vision-based data that's been collected out there. So if you can think about all the webcams, all the security systems, all the vision-based sensors that are connected to all those IoT-based devices, there is a mountain or a lake of vision-based data that's out there. How do you make sense of it? How do you determine edges? How do you determine people? How do you determine objects? How do you determine things that are going to happen, which might be, for example, an accident or something like that? How can you predict things like that from vision-based data? So we are developed a vision diploma specifically with those types of problems in mind. Once again, we're introducing people to the kind of basic Python skills that they'll need, the basic mathematics skills that they will need in order to be able to pick out particular artifacts from data, and to be able to kind of fill gaps in data and things like that, and also to be able to make prediction, but specifically with a vision problem and application set in mind. So particularly when we're looking at geometric computer vision, we're looking at things like autonomous driving problems. So we've designed this diploma with Vallejo and also with JLR, so that we're looking at specific problems that are motivated by autonomous driving, and the kind of vision problems that look, and we'll be looking at those problems on a case study type basis. We're also looking at other intelligent visual computing applications, so that filters into things like robotics. When do you make decisions in terms of interception? When do you make things in terms of contact? When do you in terms of manufacturing problems, things like that. Invariably, visual-based feedback is the best type of feedback for your servo control system, as long as you can make sense of the vision-based data. Next diploma we have is in cognitive robotics, and it actually kind of ties in quite closely with the vision diploma. I mean, we're looking here at the grand challenges associated with robotics at the moment, which is locomotion, dexterous manufacturing, and intelligent decision making in relation to path planning. So specifically, when we're looking at problems like this, once again, we look at these modern challenges. How do we make robots move from A to B in an intelligent fashion? How do we predict how they should move? How do we make decisions about what they do when they get from point A to point B? How can we make intelligent decisions in relation to adding value to a manufacturing process using a mobile robot? So specifically, we've designed this in parallel with Johnson & Johnson. We're looking at problems like, okay, we can move an extra manufacturing resource to a particular universal machine. Now, what can we do with that? What is the extra value that we can add to the process using that? How can we do that in a dynamic fashion? We are also looking at path planning, mapping and manipulation problems. We've worked in, our design team has worked in parallel with the defense forces and the security forces in this regard, particularly in looking at how drones are being used at the moment in order to be able to map our borders, map our coastline, and secure our coastline. I mean, if you think about how big the Irish coastline is, I think it's 7 times bigger than our land border. You can't do that with 2 boats. I mean, effectively, you do have to use artificial intelligence, and you do have to make intelligent decisions in relation to planning and mapping. So those are the kind of case study problems that we're looking at the moment. In terms of sensing and perception, we're specifically looking at digital twins and how we can use in intelligent manufacturing processes. We can use AR and VR in order to be augmented reality and virtual reality in order to be able to help the manufacturing process, in order to be able to help the manufacture of difficult components which cannot be made by humans, which a lot of the geometries we're talking about now actually can't be done by humans because they're just too small. So how can we actually help that? How can we help that process using these augmented sensing and perception systems? And so that's what the cognitive robotics diploma is about. Our final one I'm going to talk in detail about is strategic leadership. So again, it comes back to Shane's point and to Richard's point in relation to the multidisciplinary teams that we're putting together here in order to be able to make this digital world of work. Invariably, if you're going to have teams with different backgrounds together, you have to lead them. Leading them is a challenge in itself. So, what is the style and nature of different leadership types? What is the psychology associated with leadership? How do you get the best out of your team? How do you determine outputs and key deliverables for that team? How do you determine your tasks? How do you manage that team in a sensitive way? How do you make sense of the digital transformation challenges that are out there? So in other words, if you want to use the digital design tools in an intelligent fashion in order to make your team work, how can you do that? We think that this will suit anybody who is interested in leading an interdisciplinary team. And we think it will be very much case study driven. So again, this will be very much where the community of practice, where leaders of teams come together and talk about problems in a community of practice type environment will help. We've designed this in partnership with Shane Loughlin from eCubers, Takumi. We've looked at the Irish Blood Transfusion Service. So particularly we're looking at interdisciplinary teams, public and private, wherein there are big challenges to be overcome in relation to providing goods and services for the modern world, the modern digital world. And we hope that we know, because of the feedback that we have from our enterprise boards, that these leadership and all the diplomas will meet their objectives in that regard. The final diploma that I want to talk briefly about, but we're not taking students on until January, is going to be our summer school. One of the big features of our diplomas is you can stack them towards a master's, and the final component of that master's can either be a capstone project or a futures summer school like this. So you can think in terms of designing a product, service, or system in a summer school type intensive environment like this, so we can think in terms of, how do you build strategy? What's your force? How do you predict the future? How do you try to predict the future? What are the kind of skills that are going to be needed? What are the kind of services that are going to be required? How do you deal with system change? How are you agile? Those type of things. So that's the kind of summer school. Now, that's again for a in-depth case study driven approach to product and service design. And that summer school will begin in May of 2022, and we'll take registrations on that in January of next year for the first time. So that's a quick lightning overview of all the diplomas thus far. So Sinead, I think that's enough to be going on with. We could probably take questions, or if Emma's on the line, we can listen to Emma.
Yeah, no, to Claire, thanks so much, Martin. There's a huge amount in there, and I think lots to digest. And we'll go to Claire, and then we'll do our Q&A session. So Claire, IBEC are really at the cutting edge of horizon scanning and looking at what are the next skills that are out there. In terms of the work you've done so far, are the ULPDs hitting that brief, and what are the next areas of need?
Well, good afternoon, Sinead, and thanks a million for having me on the panel discussion this afternoon. Firstly, before I even get into answering your question, I'm kind of just blown away by, listening to the two companies there this afternoon. And what the key message I took from both those presentations is really that innovation is really at the heart of the business strategy here, and changing people's lives. I mean, from a medical technology perspective, or even indeed from I suppose a computer application, or indeed smart information. So we can see how the business profile and the enterprise base in Ireland is changing because of digital technology and the implementation of that, and how we invest in R&D and how we invest in innovation. And that's going to be a critical component, I think, for the future. So with that in mind, when I'm kind of looking to the future, and a lot of my work is very much associated around, well, what is the future of work? Much closer than we think. And I think Shane really articulated that there well. If you think about the major innovations over the last 15 years, smart communications technology, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, increased battery life, gene processing, all of that. And you think about the next 15, what's coming, and it's very uncertain. We don't know, we can't predict with any degree of accuracy. So having an opportunity to I suppose get involved in flexible kind of learning opportunities, you have, I suppose, a workforce or indeed people who are keen to be part of that next wave of technology, or that next wave of innovation. And I think that's perhaps where the postgraduate diplomas from UL can really hit that mark. So to answer your question, yes, I think you're on it. The other thing that's really interesting is that over the last 18 months, COVID-19 has impacted on every facet of every business. So every business now is nearly a technology business. So it's not just the typical sectors that we would have thought in the past, or some of the companies that Martin highlighted. Every single industry sector, or even indeed the public sector, is now going to have to start to think like that. So we're really at a point in Ireland where we're at a skills revolution. So technology, digitalisation, and indeed consumer choice and consumer behaviour may be associated with the sustainability or the low carbon agenda, where technology and innovation can also play a key role, will be significantly important. Just in terms of the horizon scanning, and it's great to see the change in Boston, actually, that here we are having this international collaboration all the time, because we're in Ireland, there's lots up for renewal at the moment, lots up for debate. We can see that in terms of the discussions around global corporation tax. So big pressures on a lot of our competitiveness challenges. But at the same time, we have our companies trying to innovate and grow and develop and continue to be world leaders in what they continue to do. That's having an increasing stress on the skills and talent pipeline, because very hard for hiring managers to really figure out, well, what type of skills do we bring in? And Shane said there, you know, looking at the different disciplines that you're now hiring for. Traditionally, maybe 15 years ago, that might have been very, very different and very kind of siloed. So I think opportunities for people, this is what's, maybe if there's one take-home message I'd like to give to some of the audience today, is there's opportunities in a broad range of industries now for you through these types of programs, and you're getting to get a great opportunity to work with companies like this, and the fact that they're so connected and embedded into the program development. The big answer from our horizon scanning is like, where are the skills needs of the future? If I had a crystal ball, it's a really challenging one to actually pin down. But the one thing that we'd be saying in IBEC is quite strong is around how you develop those kind of strong technical skills that these postgraduate diplomas will do, but also actually the transversal skills that you'll need, or the softer skills, as I like to call them, the hard skills of the 21st century, around how do you actually employ those technical skills. So it's incredibly important to be able to make sure that these programs still help the individual to build their network, to build their influencing skills, to be able to communicate their value of this program when they return to the workforce, and be that ambassador actually again for the future. So lots changing. Without a doubt, digitalization is having a massive impact. So we need to make sure that everybody at every kind of point is having some level of has some degree of kind of data analytics skills. Like, I'm blown away when Martin said there, you know, about the billions of devices that are going to be connected to the internet, and actually the opportunity that data can provide for our organizations to make better decisions, to make better products, to make our lives ultimately better into the future. I've just come from another interesting discussion around skills this morning, and one thing that I took from it is, globally, given that hiring was in such a kind of I suppose a place of abeyance over the last 18 months, obviously the labour market is increasingly heated up, but actually for the first time in, again, about 10 to 12 years, there's a major issue and a major talent shortage, particularly in these key areas. So I would imagine actually that the opportunities for individuals who participate in these programs will be quite significant into the future. And as I said, lots of different organizations are trying to hire people with these skills. So I think it's preparing individuals really well for this next wave of innovation, this next wave of the future of work, much closer than we think. We'll probably be driving those autonomous vehicles much sooner than we may have thought originally, just because of the pace of acceleration and the pace of change, and we need to start equipping ourselves to be able to do it. So hard to answer the question with any degree of accuracy around where my next punt should be, but I think by participating in a program and lifting, as Emma said, actually what we're trying to do here is shift the dial, move Ireland into a really interesting space in terms of how our companies are growing, are scaling, and all the time moving into more interesting spaces, more interesting projects, more innovative, more dynamic. And internationally, that can only be a good thing for Ireland, but also for the individual who gets the opportunity to be part of that next journey.
Absolutely, Claire. Thanks so much. And I really like your point about the ecosystem, that, you know, small companies, bigger companies, employers, employees, that, you know, it speaks to the ecosystem in its entirety, and a rising tide gathers all boats. At this point, I would like to thank all of our speakers. You know, these are incredibly busy people, and we are so appreciative of your time today, and indeed your guidance of the programme. So thank you so much. I'm looking at the chat here, and I don't think there is any questions for our speakers, so you can dial off, guys, if you want, or you can listen to questions around the fees and things like that, but it's completely up to you. Martin, I might throw some of the questions at you if you are ready.
And our industry speakers, please feel free to chime in and give me a dig out if you want now.
Yeah.
Struggling, right?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. So, Martin, one of the questions here, and I'm not sure in relation to which PD this person has asked it, is do you need to have a basic or intermediate or even expert knowledge of computer science to be able to do some of these courses?
Yeah, I mean, these are level 9 programs, so we would assume normally that you would have a level 8, which is an undergraduate engineering or science qualification in computing, engineering, or a cognitive discipline. Now, we also know that there are a number of people out there who have significant kind of workplace learning portfolios and who are doing this on the job but are not formally qualified. So we will be looking at people's CVs and portfolios on a case-by-case basis and making a judgment as to whether they're going to be able to do the program. And I think that's the fairest way. So normally we would expect people would have a level 8, but there will be, there will be an asterisk to that. We will look at people's portfolios so that, if we feel that you're able for the material, we'll absolutely give you the chance to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. I might add to that is under the ULWork programme, we have procured access to all UL students to LinkedIn Learning. So just like in previous times where if you felt like there was a deficit in your own skill set, you'd go to the library and pick up a book to read up on something. Now students would be able to do maybe a basic or a foundational course in an area if the material is too challenging at a particular moment in time.
And that was one of the key learnings we had from the AI Masters as well, Sinead, which is that like some people didn't need a full diploma and some people didn't need a full degree. Actually, the qualifying certificate, that kind of micro credential was all they needed because they now knew how to lead a team, for example. They knew what they needed to know now in relation to Python, in relation to machine learning and things like that. And so we're going to adopt that principle throughout all the professional diplomas. We're going to be asking all the course directors to design a masterclass wherein there'll be a 10 to 15 hour block of education associated with your diploma. And so then after that, you can make the decision, in a way, what more do you need? Where else do I need to go? Particularly in terms of building up and stacking my master's, my final qualification.
Yeah, the next question, it's been asked in relation to the data analytics program, but I think is applicable to all the PDs in terms of the time commitment needed per week for doing them. And we do realize that people doing these courses will be working and will be busy. So how much time, Martin, around per week?
So we've set it at a nominal of 15 hours a week, right, in terms of engagement. Now, there will be some students who get it done faster, we know them, and there'll be some students who'll probably take that a little bit more than they should. Now, one thing about e-moderation and one thing about the way in which we close the loops is we will try to stop people, overly stressing on the material and spending too much time on the material. So it has been designed with workplace and part-time learners in mind. The nominal engagement for a module, a 6 credit module, a 5 credit module, as it might be. So, we think in terms of, one activity equals 1 ECTS credit, and that will be effectively 1 week, and it will be, 15 hours nominally worth of engagement per week.
Yeah.
And we do try to design our diplomas so as that people are only doing 1 activity at a time. They're only studying 1 module at a time, because it's the key feedback that we've had from our part-time programs across the graduate school. People are busy. We know how busy you are. We hear you. You can only do 1 thing at a time. And these courses are designed so that you'll only be doing 1 thing at a time.
Great, thanks, Martin. And that feeds nicely into one of the other questions in terms of, when are the lectures going to be delivered? Can someone come when the kids are gone to bed?
Yeah, so the idea is that there will be a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous activity in any given week. It will generally be the case that there'll be about 2 hours of synchronous. Now, when we say synchronous, that's a kind of a schedule. Now, normally it will be out of hours, right? And it will be, normally in the evenings. But then apart from that, all other material will be done at a time to suit you. So therefore, it'll be recorded. There will be forums wherein those moderated forums will be covered by our e-moderators at certain times during the week, based upon the needs of our learners, and the loops will be closed, at a Saturday morning, by an e-moderator who'll be, there on a Saturday morning for people who want to study it on a Saturday morning. And so we will try to manage our groups in an intelligent fashion so as that people who are in a 15-person group will be grouped together in terms of when you're nominal, when you're, when you will be committing to an activity, you'll have other people committing to that activity at the same time, so that you'll never be on your own and that you'll always have somebody to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, and I think that feeds into one of the questions that we've answered in the chat, but in terms of how the programs are assessed, and they're going to be largely assessed by those activities that you spoke about and project-based work and group work. Where possible, we're going to try and avoid large terminal exams, but of course this will vary from course director for each of the professional diplomas. But we have worked with an international expert, Professor Geary Salmon, who is one of the world's leading digital education experts, and she has worked with us to help design these programs to meet the needs of online professional learners. Are these programs open to non-nationals? Yes, they are, absolutely. The EU fee, the program for anyone who is EU resident, so Irish resident or EU resident, is 3,500. If you are non-EU resident, they are 4,750 euro for each of the PDs. In terms of funding support, so we have received funding from the Higher Education Authority of 1,250 euro per person on these PDs. That was to the university, but we have passed that fee or grant or funding directly onto the student. So that's why they're 3,500 euro. For companies placing more than 5 people on any of the courses, there is bulk discounts available. Email myself and Martin at ul@work@ul.ie. That's ul@atwork@ul.ie. Limerick Chamber Skillnet, I believe, is also looking to support people coming on these programs, and perhaps reach out to them, and I'll put a link into the chat for details of that. I think they're providing some funding as well. This is an interesting question. This person is very ambitious. How many professional diplomas can be done in parallel? I'm blown away by that person's enthusiasm.
I mean, the idea is a full-time student would take 30 credits worth of education per semester. So we're offering 15 credits worth of education per semester in each of our diplomas. So it's designed for people who are holding down jobs well. You would be expected to. So whilst I suppose theoretically you could do 2 diplomas at a time, but I don't know how you could actually. You need to have a very understanding employer. I'll put it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. We might finish up the Q&A session there, but if you put in a question and we didn't get to it, we've one more question here, Martin, in terms of what would one need to include in the portfolio that needs to be submitted if you don't have a relevant degree?
Okay, so what I would ask people to do is if you go on to ul.ie/GPS/ULWork, which is our application website, but it's also the website for the program, and it'll kind of show you what each of the modules that you'll be doing will be. If you could give us instances from your portfolio of achievement wherein you feel that you have achieved in this space. So, for example, I mean, if you're scientific computing using Python, if you've got Python experience, tell us what your Python experience is. If you have practical experience of, using, commercial vision systems and being able to determine, make decisions on the basis of, data or something like that. If any workplace-based activity that you have that you can talk about that will give us confidence that you are able to deal with the material that is relevant to your diploma, and we will take that into account.
Great, thanks, Martin. So So some people are looking for additional information. Kieran put into the chat the pages for each of the PDs along with the name of the course director. So if you're in doubt in terms of that question, like, you know, do I have enough experience, reach out to the course directors. They might be able to guide you specifically for the specific professional diplomas. Most of them don't bite. They're generally quite nice people. We might finish up at that point. The recording is going to be sent out to everybody who has registered. Any questions that weren't addressed in that session, please email them to ul@work@ul.ie. There will be a survey sent out with the recording. Many people asked about the future professional diplomas for 2022 on. We'd love to get your feedback on the ones that we're currently thinking about, and if there's something missing from that list, you know, the door is open for UL@Work to get your feedback. You know, you are the people at the coalface, so please do complete that survey. And thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It feels about 50 degrees in the room that I'm in at the moment. I'm dying to get out and get an ice cream, and I hope. Thank you so much for giving up your lunch hour today.
The highest temperature recorded in the lab along the C block corridor, Sinead, this week was 44.2 degrees.
44.2. Well, I am not built for 44.2.
This is one of the things when you've got kind of like a department of postgrads with access to IoT devices, right? You get all this feedback on a kind of on a regular basis, right?
Great, guys. Thanks so much. Slán go fóill. Thanks for coming.